A dark shape moves against a stormy moon, a creature of pure nightmare from ancient Japan. This is the Nue, a legendary chimera so terrifying its very name means something that cannot be clearly seen. For centuries, this bizarre monster has haunted the heart of Japanese folklore, a symbol of the unknown that defies all simple explanation. By the end of this journey, you will understand the full, shocking story of this beast, from its monstrous anatomy to the heroic archer who dared to face it. We will uncover why its cry brought an emperor to his knees and explore the real fears this creature represented. What kind of creature could be so frightening that it remains unforgettable after 1,000 years? To truly grasp the terror of the Nue, we must first understand the world it comes from. This world is populated by yokai, a vast and bewildering category of supernatural beings in Japanese folklore. Yokai are not a single type of monster. They are an entire spectrum of entities, from playful tricksters who might hide your left sandal to deeply malevolent spirits that bring disease and ruin. Some are born from natural objects, gaining life after 100 years. Others are the transformed souls of the dead, lingering with a grudge. They are the classic explanation for the inexplicable, the answer to the question of what goes bump in the night. The rustle of leaves in a still forest, a strange illness that strikes without warning, a shadow glimpsed from the corner of your eye, all of these could be the work of a yokai. Within this immense and chaotic menagerie of creatures, the Nue stands apart. It is not a minor nuisance or a simple ghost. It is something far more potent and far more feared, a chimera of such profound dread that it threatened the very heart of imperial power. Its very name holds the key to its horror. Nue is a word steeped in deliberate ambiguity, a linguistic puzzle that perfectly captures the creature's elusive nature. On the surface, the name sounds like it means night bird, a simple and almost poetic description, but the written characters used to spell it tell a far more terrifying story. The name is written with the character for not and the character for a picture or a painting. So, the Nue is literally the thing that cannot be painted, the creature that cannot be clearly seen or defined. Imagine trying to describe a nightmare to a friend. You grasp for the details, but they slip away, leaving only a profound sense of dread. That is the essence of the Nue. It is not just a monster you can point to and identify. It is a creature of shadows and suggestion, a formless terror that takes shape only in the moment of its attack. This inability to be depicted made it the ultimate unknown. How do you fight something you cannot even properly describe? How do you protect yourself from a horror that has no fixed form? This name was not just a label, it was a warning of a threat so profound it defied all human understanding and art. And this conceptual horror would soon take a very physical and very noisy form over the ancient capital. This conceptual horror was given a form so bizarre it defied all logic. The Nue was a living mosaic of 4 distinct creatures, each part chosen from the most cunning and dangerous animals known to ancient Japan. Its head was that of a monkey, a creature renowned for its intelligence and mischief. This was not a simple beast of the forest, but a being capable of human-like cunning, a mind that could plot and plan its assaults. This clever head sat upon the rounded, robust torso of a tanuki, the raccoon dog. In folklore, the tanuki is a master shapeshifter and a trickster, a being of magic and deception. This combination suggested a monster that was not only intelligent but also unnaturally adaptable, able to blend into its surroundings or confuse its prey. From this deceptive body sprung the powerful, striped legs of a tiger. The tiger represented pure, untamed physical power and ferocity, a predator from foreign lands whose very name evoked fear. It gave the Nue the ability to strike with incredible speed and brutal force. Finally, in a truly unsettling twist, its tail was not a tail at all, but the front half of a snake, complete with a venomous head that could lash out independently. The snake brought the ancient symbolism of poison, betrayal, and a chilling, silent menace. Why would a creature need a second head on its tail? This was not a simple monster. It was an over-engineered nightmare, a being designed with no apparent weakness. It could think like a monkey, deceive like a tanuki, pounce like a tiger, and poison like a snake. There was no safe angle from which to approach it, no single strategy to defeat it. This impossible anatomy made it the ultimate predator, a perfect fusion of the most feared attributes in the natural world. This elegant world of imperial power was the Heian period, a golden age spanning from the year 794 to the year 1185. In the capital city of Heian, later known as Kyoto, the imperial court was the brilliant, shimmering center of the universe. Aristocrats lived lives of breathtaking refinement, where the precise shade of one's layered silk robes or the skill of one's calligraphy could define an entire career. They composed delicate poetry, held moon-viewing parties, and immersed themselves in complex rituals of courtly love. Yet, this world of manicured gardens and perfumed sleeves was incredibly fragile. Just beyond the carefully ordered city lay the vast, untamed wilderness of Japan, a place seen as dark, dangerous, and teeming with malevolent spirits. The courtiers lived in constant tension, their polished existence perpetually shadowed by the fear of the unknown. A sudden illness, a strange noise at night, an unexpected drought, all of these were not mere misfortunes. They were potential signs of a spiritual attack, the work of a yokai breaching the civilized world. It was from this profound cultural anxiety, this clash between human order and chaotic nature, that the legend of the Nue was born. The creature was the embodiment of everything the court feared, a monster from the wild that dared to bring its terror right to the emperor's doorstep. The peace of the Heian court was shattered by a sound from a waking nightmare. Night after night, a thick black cloud would descend upon the imperial palace, and from its depths came a cry unlike any other. It was not the hoot of an owl or the howl of a wolf, but a bizarre, discordant shriek that seemed to be the voice of the monster itself. Witnesses described it as a sound that chilled the soul, a mix of a monkey's chatter, a tiger's snarl, and a serpent's hiss, all woven into one terrifying chorus. This unearthly wailing pierced the silken walls of the emperor's private chambers, targeting the most powerful man in Japan, Emperor Konoe. Night after night, the emperor was tormented, unable to sleep, his mind and body fraying under the relentless psychological assault. The source of this horror was, of course, the Nue. It had crossed the boundary from the wild into the very heart of civilization, and it was not there to simply frighten. It was there to destroy. The emperor, the living symbol of divine order and stability, began to waste away. He fell gravely ill, struck by a mysterious sickness that the court physicians could not diagnose or cure. His affliction was not seen as a simple disease, but as a spiritual pollution, a direct curse from the monstrous creature haunting his roof. The entire imperial government was thrown into chaos. If the emperor, the son of heaven, could be brought low by a beast from the forest, what did that say about their entire ordered world? The court's rituals and poems were useless against this raw, primal terror. The nightmare from the wilderness had invaded, and it was winning. The emperor's sickness was as baffling as the creature that caused it. Emperor Konoe did not suffer from a common fever or a simple ailment. His was a profound and wasting illness, a slow collapse that seemed to drain the very life from him. He was plagued by terrifying nightmares whenever he managed to sleep, and during his waking hours he was gripped by a deep, unshakable melancholy. His body grew weak and frail, a visible symbol of a spirit under siege. For the court, this was not a medical problem to be solved by physicians, but a spiritual crisis of the highest order. The emperor was more than a man. He was the divine center of the nation, the linchpin holding the cosmic order together. His affliction meant the entire country was out of balance. Panic spread through the palace corridors as whispered as the nightly cries from the roof. The court's most learned doctors were summoned. They prepared their most potent herbal remedies and practiced their acupuncture, but nothing worked. Their medicines, grounded in the physical world, were useless against a curse born from the supernatural. Then the most powerful priests and onmyoji, the masters of yin and yang, were called upon. They performed elaborate rites of exorcism, chanting sutras and arranging sacred symbols around the palace to form a spiritual barrier. They burned incense and made offerings to the Buddhas and the native kami, the Shinto gods, begging for their divine intervention. Yet the black cloud still came, the horrifying cry still echoed, the emperor continued to fade. This failure was a catastrophe for the court's worldview. It proved that their most powerful rituals, the very foundation of their society, were powerless against this specific, monstrous threat. The Nue was not just a beast, it was a walking, flying contradiction to all they believed. It was a creature of the wild that had invaded the sacred, ordered space of the palace and proven itself stronger than both medicine and prayer. The line between the physical and spiritual worlds had not just been crossed, it had been completely erased by the monster on the roof. With the court's most powerful defenses broken, a new kind of hero was needed. The emperor's desperate counsel turned away from priests and physicians and looked instead to a man of action, a warrior whose name was whispered with respect across the land. This was Minamoto no Yorimasa, a samurai of the legendary Minamoto clan. Yorimasa was not merely a brute force fighter, he was a rare combination of the warrior and the artist, a man equally famed for his deadly precision with a bow as he was for his skill in composing elegant poetry. In the refined world of the Heian court, this made him an extraordinary figure. He possessed the brute strength to confront a physical monster, but also the refined spirit and clarity of mind to face a supernatural threat. His reputation was built on coolness under pressure and an almost supernatural accuracy, traits that made him the only person the terrified court could imagine standing on the palace roof in the dead of night, waiting for a chimera. He was the embodiment of practical power, the one man who could translate the court's abstract terror into a single, decisive arrow. Minamoto no Yorimasa did not face the darkness alone. By his side stood his most loyal retainer, a man named Heian, chosen for his immense courage and unwavering steadiness. Together, they took up a vigil on the palace grounds, two solitary figures standing against the oppressive gloom. The night itself seemed to conspire against them. A storm was brewing, and a thick, unnatural cloud blotted out the moon and stars, plunging the imperial compound into a deep, unsettling darkness. The only sounds were the nervous rustle of leaves in the growing wind and the distant rumble of thunder. Each creak of a floorboard or snap of a twig in the distant forest made their hands tighten on their weapons. Yorimasa stood calm, his longbow held ready, his entire being focused on the roofline above. Heian stood guard with his sword, a silent pillar of strength watching his master's back. They were waiting for a sound, that terrible, multi-voiced cry that heralded the emperor's torment. The tension was a physical weight in the air, a shared breath held for what felt like an eternity. Then the first sign came. Not a sound, but a feeling, a sudden drop in temperature that raised the hairs on their arms. The wind died to an eerie stillness, and a dense, ink-black mass began to coalesce above the palace roof, swirling with a malevolent life of its own. The Nue was arriving, and the moment of truth was upon them. The darkness became absolute, a suffocating blanket of shadow and silence. Then the cry came. It was not one sound, but a layered cacophony that tore through the night, the chattering shriek of a monkey, the low growl of a big cat, and the sinister hiss of a serpent, all woven together into a single, horrifying voice. It came from directly above, from the heart of that swirling black cloud. Minamoto no Yorimasa could see nothing but the oppressive gloom, yet he did not hesitate. In that split second, he had to become more than a man, more than a samurai. He had to become an instrument of pure instinct. He drew his bow, the wood groaning with the strain, his muscles remembering 1,000 other shots while his mind focused on only this one. He did not aim with his eyes, for there was nothing to see. He aimed with his ears, with his spirit, with the very feeling of dread that emanated from the cloud. He let the arrow fly. The twang of the bowstring was lost in the storm's growing roar, but the result was unmistakable. A sharp, pained shriek, entirely different from the creature's usual cry, pierced the air. It was a sound of surprise and agony, a confirmation that his arrow had found its mark deep within the impossible anatomy of the beast. The black cloud shuddered and began to lose its form, the malevolent presence above them suddenly broken. This was not a victory of sight, but of faith and unparalleled skill, a triumph of human courage over a terror that thrived in the unseen. A sharp cry of pain echoed from the black cloud, a clear sign that Yorimasa's arrow had struck true. But the samurai knew a single shot might not be enough to kill such a supernatural beast. As the wounded creature thrashed within the dissipating gloom, his loyal retainer, Hayata, did not wait for an order. He saw his duty with perfect clarity. In a single, fluid motion, he drew his short sword, his tanto, and charged forward, scrambling onto the palace roof. The beast was wounded and disoriented, a monstrous shadow writhing in agony. Hayata did not hesitate. He closed the distance, his movements sure and decisive, and with a powerful thrust, he drove his blade deep into the creature's body, ensuring the kill. This was not a moment for grand, sweeping swordplay, but for brutal, efficient finality. In that instant, Hayata transformed from a silent guardian into a legend in his own right. His action was the ultimate expression of Bushido, the samurai code. A retainer's loyalty was not passive, it was proactive and absolute. He existed to complete his master's work, to protect his lord's honor by ensuring victory, no matter the personal risk. By finishing the Nue, Hayata secured Yorimasa's glory, and in doing so, secured his own. His name would be forever remembered, not as the man who fired the famous arrow, but as the faithful blade who made certain the monster would never rise again. With the monster slain, the change within the palace was immediate and profound. The oppressive dread that had choked the air for weeks simply vanished, lifting like a physical weight from the imperial compound. Most importantly, Emperor Konoe began to recover. His mysterious illness, which had resisted all medicine and prayer, receded as quickly as it had come. His strength returned, the color came back to his cheeks, and the terrifying nightmares ceased. This miraculous recovery was the final, undeniable proof that the Nue and the Emperor's affliction were one and the same. The beast was not just a noisy nuisance, it was a walking curse, and its death had broken the spiritual poison affecting the divine ruler. The entire court breathed a collective sigh of relief, their world order restored by the swift, decisive action of a single samurai. In gratitude, the emperor bestowed upon Minamoto no Yorimasa rewards of unimaginable value, gifts that would echo through history. The most famous of these was a legendary sword, the Shishio, which means the King of Lions. This was not merely a weapon, it was a symbol of ultimate imperial favor and a physical testament to Yorimasa's heroic deed. The Shishio became one of the most treasured heirlooms of the Minamoto clan, a tangible piece of their legacy and a constant reminder of the day a warrior's arrow saved an emperor and defined a family's destiny for generations to come. But the legend of the Nue does not end with its death on the palace roof. The creature's monstrous body still lay there, a silent, unsettling problem. In the eyes of the Heian court, a being of such potent malice was not truly gone just because its heart had stopped beating. Its very flesh was considered polluted, a vessel for a lingering curse that could seep into the land and bring new misfortunes. They could not bury it within the sacred soil of the capital for fear of poisoning the earth. They could not burn it as the smoke might carry its evil spirit across the city. The solution they devised was as strange as the creature itself, a ritual of disposal meant to cleanse the capital of this supernatural taint. The massive composite body of the Nue was dragged from the roof and loaded onto a simple wooden boat. This was not a ceremonial vessel, but a functional one chosen for a single, somber purpose. With solemn prayers and likely a great sense of relief, the courtiers pushed the boat out into the current of the Konoe River, setting the corpse of the nightmare adrift. They were entrusting the flowing waters to carry the physical remnant of their terror far away from the ordered world of Heian, back to the wild, chaotic frontiers from which it came. This act reveals a profound belief of the time that evil was a tangible force that required careful physical management long after its source was destroyed. The river was more than water, it was a flowing boundary, a natural conduit for purification. But what became of that grim cargo? The story does not simply let the boat vanish into the mist. Downriver, in an area that would later be known as Yuji, the boat is said to have washed ashore. The local villagers, discovering the horrifying carcass, were terrified. They did not know the story of the Emperor's salvation. They only saw a monster from a nightmare. In a final act of reverence and fear, they gathered stones and earth and built a large burial mound over the body, creating a permanent tomb to contain whatever dark energy might still remain. This mound, known as the Nuezuka or the Nue Mound, is said to exist to this day, a silent monument to a terror that was so powerful, it had to be buried twice, first by water and then by earth. This story of imperial terror and heroic archery was not born from a simple folktale. It was immortalized in one of Japan's greatest literary epics, the tale of the Heike. This sprawling war chronicle tells the true, tragic history of the Terror clan's meteoric rise and catastrophic fall from power. Within this grand narrative of ambition and ruin, the legend of the Nue is presented not as a standalone myth, but as a crucial piece of historical record. The chronicle treats the creature's attack on the emperor as a real event, a documented omen that foreshadowed the political and spiritual decay that would soon engulf the entire nation. The story of the Nue is positioned as a direct precursor to the bloody Genpei War, the great civil war that would ultimately destroy the Terror. Why would a national epic about a clan's downfall begin with a monster on a roof? Because the creature's assault was seen as a symptom of a world out of balance. The emperor's sickness signaled that the divine mandate to rule was faltering, and the Terror clan, who held immense power at court, were seen by their enemies as the corrupting influence behind the throne. The Nue was not just a random beast, it was the physical manifestation of this cosmic disorder, a herald of the chaos to come. The heroic victory of Minamoto no Yorimasa, the very man who slew the monster, takes on a deeper, more prophetic meaning in this context. Yorimasa was a samurai of the Minamoto clan, the arch-rivals of the Terror. His glorious deed, saving the emperor where all others had failed, was an early sign of Minamoto's strength and virtue, a stark contrast to the Terror's inability to protect the sovereign. It was the first crack in the Terror's seemingly unshakable authority, a portent that their reign was built on unstable ground. The entire Nue episode serves as a powerful metaphor. Just as a monstrous chimera from the wilds could breach the sacred palace, so too could the forces of rebellion and war breach the established order. The story warns that when the center cannot hold, when the emperor himself is vulnerable, the entire structure of the state is at risk. The tale of the Heike uses this supernatural event to frame its entire human tragedy, suggesting that the downfall of the mighty Terror was not merely a political or military failure, but a spiritual one, foretold by a beast that was both a curse and a prophecy. So what did this creature truly represent? The Nue was far more than a simple monster. It was a walking symbol of the deepest anxieties plaguing Heian-era Japan. Its bizarre composite form was a deliberate artistic choice, reflecting a fear of things that cannot be easily understood or categorized. Imagine trying to describe a complex problem using only simple words, and you begin to grasp the terror of the Nue. It was a creature of impossible contradictions, and each interpretation of its meaning reveals a different layer of dread. One powerful theory suggests the Nue was a physical manifestation of political unrest. The creature's assault on the emperor mirrored the very real threats to imperial authority from powerful warrior clans like the Terror. Just as the monster bypassed all defenses to strike at the heart of power, so too could political rivals undermine the throne from within, creating a sickness in the state that was as hard to diagnose as the emperor's mysterious illness. The creature was a perfect metaphor for a shadowy, multifaceted conspiracy that was difficult to fight because its true nature was unclear. Another compelling interpretation views the Nue as an embodiment of natural disasters. Japan is a land of earthquakes, typhoons, and tsunamis, events that arrive with terrifying suddenness and immense destructive power. Like the Nue's inexplicable nightly visits, these disasters seem to come from nowhere, striking the heart of civilization without warning or reason. The creature's hybrid body, combining the most feared attributes of different animals, could be seen as a symbolic representation of a compound catastrophe, a storm that brings flood, wind, and disease all at once. For the aristocracy, insulated by silk and poetry, the Nue was the ultimate symbol of the unknown. Its very name, the thing that cannot be painted, speaks to this. It represented every strange sound in the forest, every unexplained illness, every shadow that moved just outside the lantern light. It was the fear of the wilderness encroaching on their manicured gardens, the horrifying idea that their refined rituals and complex beliefs were utterly powerless against the raw, chaotic forces of nature. The creature's animal parts were not chosen at random. The monkey's head symbolized cunning intelligence turned to malicious ends. The tanuki's body represented deceptive appearances and the unnerving ability of evil to blend in. The tiger's legs were pure, untamable ferocity, and the snake's tail was silent, venomous betrayal. Together, they created a monster for which there was no single solution, a problem that required both a warrior's arrow and a retainer's blade to solve. The Nue was not just a beast to be killed, it was a complex crisis that had to be understood on multiple levels before it could be defeated. This final resting place of the beast is more than just a story, it is a physical location you can visit today. The Nuezuka, or Nue Mound, still exists in the Nishikaya ward of modern Kyoto, a quiet, grassy hillock that stands in stark contrast to its terrifying legend. For centuries, this has been a recognized local landmark, a tangible piece of folklore rooted in the very soil of the city. Generations of people have known this spot as the grave of the monster, a place where history and myth physically converge. It is not a grand, ornate tomb, but rather a simple, earthen mound, which somehow feels more appropriate for a creature born of the wild. This unassuming hill carries the immense weight of the story, serving as the final anchor point for an epic that spans from the imperial palace to a riverside burial. For locals, it has long been a point of curiosity and a subtle reminder of the area's deep, mysterious past, a story passed down through families living in the shadow of the ancient capital. The mound transforms the legend from an abstract tale into something real and geographically grounded. You can stand before it and feel the chill of history, knowing that according to tradition, the composite body of the nightmare lies just beneath your feet. What does such a place become in the modern world? Today, the Nuezuka is a site of quiet pilgrimage for folklore enthusiasts and curious tourists alike. It is often marked on historical walking maps of Kyoto, a detour for those seeking the city's hidden layers beyond the famous temples and shrines. Visitors find a peaceful, almost ordinary patch of green, which makes the story feel all the more haunting. There are no roaring statues of the creature, no dramatic plaques detailing its grisly anatomy. The power of the place lies in its stillness and its simplicity. This allows your imagination to fill the silence with the echoes of that terrible cry and the image of a laden boat washing ashore. The mound's preservation, even as a minor landmark, speaks to a deep cultural need to remember and physically contain the stories that define a people's fears. It proves that even a monster of pure nightmare can find a permanent home in the human world, not as a living terror, but as a quiet, earthen monument to the day an emperor was saved and a legend was buried for good. While the tale of the emperor's torment remains the most famous, the legend of the Nue did not remain confined to the capital. Like a seed carried on the wind, the core idea of this terrifying chimera took root in different soils across Japan, blossoming into unique and sometimes contradictory local legends. Far from Kyoto, in the coastal region of Echigo, now Niigata Prefecture, the Nue takes on a different role entirely. Here, it is often portrayed less as a malicious curse bringer and more as a powerful, wild guardian of the mountains. Local stories speak of a Nue that protects sacred peaks and ancient forests, a far cry from the beast that haunted an emperor's palace. This regional variation reveals how folklore adapts to local needs and environments. For a farming or fishing community, the greatest fears were not political unrest but poor harvests and bad weather. A creature as potent as the Nue could be reinterpreted as a capricious spirit of nature, one that must be appeased rather than slain. In some Echigo tales, offerings are left for the Nue to ensure a good catch or a bountiful crop, transforming the monster from a symbol of the unknown into a manageable, if still fearsome, part of the natural order. This shows the incredible flexibility of the yokai concept. A single creature can be a national omen of doom in one context and a local weather spirit in another, its meaning shaped entirely by the landscape and the people who tell its story. Further south, on the island of Shikoku, another fascinating twist emerges. In parts of Heian Prefecture, the Nue is sometimes described not as a single composite beast, but as a pair of creatures, a male and a female, that hunt together. This version amplifies the creature's menace, turning a solitary terror into a coordinated threat. The story expands beyond a single heroic confrontation to encompass a broader, more persistent danger that requires an entire community to overcome. In one local legend, villagers must band together to drive the mating pair from their valley, using coordinated noise and fire, a stark contrast to the single, perfect arrow of Minamoto no Yorimasa. This shift from individual heroism to collective action reflects the different social structures of rural Japan, where survival depended on community cohesion. The monster's anatomy might also change, sometimes swapping the tiger's legs for those of a wild boar, an animal far more common and feared in the mountainous regions of Shikoku. Why does the tiger become a boar? Because the local mythology is built from local fears. The boar was a real and present danger, a creature that could devastate fields and threaten lives. By incorporating it, the story grounds its horror in the immediate, tangible experiences of the people, proving that a legend stays alive not by staying the same, but by changing to reflect the world of those who tell it. Perhaps the most startling reinterpretation comes from the far northern reaches of Tohoku. In some Aomori folktales, the Nue is not even a physical being at all, but a disembodied, mournful cry that echoes through misty valleys at dusk. It becomes a purely auditory phantom, a sound that brings melancholy or foretells a coming storm. This version strips the creature down to its most essential, terrifying element from the original tale, the cry that tormented the emperor. Without a body to fight, the horror becomes entirely psychological and unavoidable. How do you slay a sound? You cannot shoot it with an arrow or stab it with a sword. The people of the north lived with a harsh climate and long, dark winters, a world where unseen forces could feel more potent than any physical beast. Their Nue became a personification of the landscape's own lonely voice, a natural phenomenon given a name and a story to make the immense, impersonal power of nature feel somehow knowable. This evolution from a complex chimera to a simple, haunting sound demonstrates the core purpose of folklore. It is not about preserving a single, unchanging truth, but about providing a framework for humans to explain and ultimately live with the mysteries and dangers of their world. From the political heart of the empire to the remote mountain villages, the Nue became whatever people needed it to be, a shapeshifter not just in form but in its very meaning. The legend of the Nue presents a fascinating paradox for any artist. How do you visually depict a creature whose very name means it cannot be clearly seen? The classical answer, found in painted hand scrolls known as emaki, was to embrace the monster's defined, if bizarre, anatomy. The most famous of these, the Nuezu, or picture of the Nue, meticulously illustrates the creature just as the legends describe. You see the distinct head of a monkey, the rounded body of a tanuki, the powerful legs of a tiger, and that unforgettable snake-headed tail. These early artists did not shy away from the challenge, instead grounding their nightmare in precise, almost documentary detail. The style is often stark and serious, with the creature rendered against a plain background, forcing the viewer to confront every unsettling part of its composite form. This approach served a specific purpose: to make the unbelievable feel tangibly real for an audience that accepted the story as historical fact. The creature in these scrolls is not a symbol, it is a documented entity, a captured monster pinned to the page for examination. Yet, even in this literal representation, a question lingers. Does seeing the Nue so clearly defined somehow diminish its terror? Or does the very act of pinning down its form fulfill the name's warning, proving that no painting can ever truly capture its essence? Centuries later, the visual language of the Nue underwent a dramatic transformation with the rise of ukiyo-e, the woodblock prints of the Edo period. Here, the creature was freed from the formal constraints of the emaki and plunged into a world of dynamic action and popular imagination. Master artists like Tsukioka Yoshitoshi reimagined the Nue not as a static specimen, but as a living force of chaos. In his prints, the creature is often shown in the midst of its attack, wreathed in that infamous black cloud, its form half obscured by storm and shadow. The focus shifts from a clinical depiction of its parts to the emotional impact of its presence. The lines are more expressive, the compositions more dramatic, emphasizing the swirling darkness and the terror of the imperial court. This was art for the masses, and the story was told with heightened drama and visceral energy. The Nue became less of a specific historical monster and more of a universal icon of supernatural dread, a recognizable character in Japan's grand gallery of folklore. Artists played with its form, sometimes exaggerating the tiger's ferocity or making the serpent's head more actively venomous, tailoring the horror to the tastes of a public that consumed these prints as entertainment. This evolution in art mirrors a profound shift in the creature's cultural role. In the Heian era emaki, the Nue is a direct physical threat to the established order, a monster that must be recorded and understood to be defeated. Its clear depiction is an attempt to master the unknown through documentation. By the Edo period, the political and spiritual anxieties of the ancient court had faded. The Nue was no longer a present danger but a legendary tale from a romanticized past. Ukiyo-e artists were not trying to document a real creature, they were illustrating a thrilling story. They explored the creature's symbolic power, using its form to represent overwhelming misfortune or the sudden intrusion of chaos into an orderly life. The obscuring cloud became just as important as the beast itself, a visual metaphor for the unseen forces that can disrupt any existence. This journey from documented horror to dramatic symbol shows how a culture's art does not just depict its monsters, it actively reshapes them, refining their image across generations to fit new fears and new forms of storytelling. The indescribable beast was paradoxically described again and again, each artist adding a new layer to its impossible form and ensuring its lasting place in the visual imagination of a nation. The monster that once threatened an emperor now lives on your television screen. Its journey from a Heian-era omen to a modern pop culture icon is a testament to the enduring power of its unsettling design. In the world of anime, the Nue often appears not as a world-ending threat, but as a powerful, enigmatic spirit. The beloved series Natsume's Book of Friends presents a perfect example. Here, the Nue is a majestic and lonely creature, bound by ancient rules and possessing a deep, melancholic wisdom. It is no longer a simple villain to be slain, but a complex being with its own history and emotions, reflecting a contemporary desire to understand the other rather than merely destroy it. This shift transforms the monster from a symbol of pure fear into a figure of empathy, a yokai seeking its place in a world that has long forgotten it. The story asks a compelling question: can a creature born from nightmares also possess a soul worth saving? Video games have eagerly adopted the Nue, but they often return to its roots as a formidable boss enemy. In the challenging action game Nioh, facing the Nue is a brutal test of skill. The game leans into the creature's classical depiction, emphasizing its chaotic blend of attacks, from the monkey's shrieks that disorient the player to the tiger's lightning-fast pounces and the snake-tail's poisonous strikes. This interactive experience forces you to confront the same tactical nightmare that Minamoto no Yorimasa faced. How do you fight an enemy with no single weakness? The battle becomes a visceral, personal retelling of the legend, where you are the samurai standing against the storm. Meanwhile, the Persona series takes a more psychological approach. In these games, the Nue is not a physical beast but a persona, a manifestation of a character's inner psyche. It is classified under the Moon Arcana, representing illusions, dreams, and the unconscious mind. This is a brilliantly modern interpretation, framing the Nue as the embodiment of hidden fears and deceptive thoughts that lurk within every person. The creature that once represented an external, political curse is now internalized, becoming a metaphor for the personal demons we all must face and ultimately accept as part of ourselves. This cultural recycling extends into manga and film, where directors and artists use the Nue's iconic form to evoke a sense of ancient, unshakable dread in a modern context. Its distinctive silhouette, the monkey head, the feline body, the serpent tail, is instantly recognizable to a Japanese audience, allowing creators to summon 1,000 years of folklore with a single image. A filmmaker might not need to explain the creature's backstory. Its visual presence alone conveys themes of a cursed past returning or a natural world violently pushing back against human encroachment. The Nue has become a versatile narrative shorthand, its meaning flexible enough to serve stories about environmental anxiety, psychological trauma, or the weight of history. Its continued presence in everything from blockbuster games to intimate anime proves that the most potent legends are not frozen in time. They are living stories, constantly reshaped by each new generation to give form to their own unique fears and fascinations, ensuring that the thing that cannot be painted is forever being redrawn. This tendency to stitch together our deepest fears into a single monstrous form is not unique to Japan. The human imagination, across vast distances and different cultures, has repeatedly reached for the same terrifying solution, the Chimera. Look to the sun-baked myths of ancient Greece, and you will find the original namesake for such creatures, the Chimera itself. Homer described it as a thing of immortal make, not human, lion-fronted and snake behind, a goat in the middle. Here was a beast that breathed fire, a fusion of three powerful animals into one unstoppable engine of destruction. It took a hero, Bellerophon, riding the winged horse Pegasus to defeat it from the air, a solution as extraordinary as the monster itself. Why would cultures with no contact invent such similar horrors? The answer lies in the fundamental way our minds process fear. A single threat, like a lion, is terrifying but understandable. But a creature that combines the lion's strength with a serpent's venom and a goat's stubborn tenacity represents a more profound and complex danger, a problem with no simple solution. It is the embodiment of a crisis that attacks on multiple fronts simultaneously. This pattern repeats in the dusty tombs of ancient Egypt, There, the goddess Ammit, the devourer of the dead, waited by the scales of judgment. She was not a monster to be fought in life, but a final, spiritual chimera assembled from the most feared Nile predators. Her body was part lion, part hippopotamus, and part crocodile. She was not just a physical threat, she was a moral one. The lion represented wild power, the hippo uncontrollable chaos, and the crocodile silent, patient death. Together, they formed the ultimate punishment for a sinful heart, a creature designed to annihilate a soul completely. The fear was not of a beast in the desert, but of a failed judgment in the afterlife. Further east in the Persian Empire, legends spoke of the manticore. This creature had the body of a powerful red lion, the face of a man often with a sharp-toothed grin, and the tail of a scorpion capable of launching deadly spines. The human face added a layer of chilling intelligence to the animal's ferocity, making its violence seem calculated and personal. It was a hunter that could think like a man, a perversion of human reason placed in the service of a predator's instincts. So we have the Greek chimera, a natural disaster given animal form. The Egyptian Ammit, a divine punishment made flesh. The Persian manticore, a perversion of human cunning. And the Japanese Nue, a political and spiritual curse that breaches civilized walls. Each culture used the same tool, the composite beast, to model a different category of ultimate dread. They are all attempts to give a tangible shape to the formless anxieties that haunt every society, the fear of an unstoppable, multifaceted catastrophe that defies all our usual defenses. Whether it breathes fire, devours souls, or shrieks from a palace roof, the chimera is a universal language of terror, a testament to our shared need to name the unnameable and fight the unfightable, if only in the stories we tell. That cry was a weapon in itself, a sound woven from pure dread. Ancient texts describe it not as a single noise, but a layered cacophony, a chilling mix of a monkey's piercing shriek, a tiger's low, rumbling growl, and the sharp, sinister hiss of a serpent. Imagine hearing that chorus echo from a pitch-black cloud above your home. It was not just loud, it was wrong, a violation of the natural soundscape that signaled immediate and unnatural danger. This was not the call of any creature a person could recognize and rationalize. It was the voice of the unknown given sound, and it carried a psychological impact far greater than any physical attack. The cry was the first and most persistent symptom of the curse, a sonic pollution that seeped into the imperial chambers and frayed the nerves of the most powerful man in Japan. But where did the idea for such a terrifying sound originate? Could it have been born from a real, if misunderstood, encounter with nature? One compelling theory points to the sero, a goat antelope native to Japan's dense mountain forests. The sero is known for its sharp, piercing whistles and guttural screams, especially during its mating season. To a terrified courtier insulated within the refined silence of the palace, the sudden, alien shriek of a sero echoing from the nearby hills could easily be misinterpreted as something monstrous. Folklore has a way of magnifying reality, of taking a strange but natural sound and weaving a narrative of terror around it. The lonely cry of a bird, the coughing roar of a distant bear, or the unsettling hiss of a large owl could all have been raw materials for the legend. When filtered through the lens of deep-seated fear and the dark of night, these individual sounds might have fused in the human imagination, creating the composite cry of a composite beast. The Nue's voice, therefore, may have been the first and most haunting part of its legend to form, a sound so unsettling that the human mind felt compelled to invent a monster terrible enough to be its source. Its appearance was never a coincidence. In the world of Japanese folklore, the Nue was the quintessential harbinger, a living omen whose sole purpose was to signal the beginning of the end. This creature did not simply wander out of the forest to cause random mischief. Its presence was a deliberate, targeted message from the supernatural world, a stark announcement that the established order was about to crumble. The target was almost always someone of immense power, an emperor, a shogun, or a great clan leader. Why the powerful? Because in the spiritual logic of the time, the health of the nation was tied directly to the virtue and spiritual purity of its ruler. A supernatural attack on the emperor was not a personal assault, it was an attack on the very soul of Japan. The Nue was the physical proof that the ruler had lost the mandate of heaven, that corruption or moral failure at the highest level had created a crack in reality, allowing this monstrous symbol of chaos to slip through. Its cry was not just a sound of terror, it was a funeral dirge for an era, a warning that the carefully balanced scales of yin and yang had been violently upended. Think of it as a supernatural alarm bell, one that could not be silenced until the underlying spiritual sickness was addressed, often through dramatic change or immense bloodshed. This is why the story is embedded so deeply within the tale of the Heike. The Nue's torment of Emperor Konoe was not a standalone monster tale. It was the opening act of a national tragedy, the first domino to fall in the chain of events that would lead to the Genpei War and the utter destruction of the Terror Clan. The creature's attack was the diagnosis of a fatal disease in the body politic, a disease that would inevitably prove terminal. This role as a herald taps into a universal human fear, the dread of impending doom. We have all felt the chill of a bad omen, a feeling that something terrible is about to happen. The Nue gave that feeling a body, a voice, and a target. It was the answer to the question that haunts every golden age. What if our luck has run out? What if the peace and prosperity we have built are nothing but a fragile illusion, waiting for the right monster to come along and shatter it forever? The legend assures us that disaster rarely strikes without a sign. The true horror lies in recognizing the sign for what it is and realizing you may already be powerless to stop what follows. Even the most terrifying legends often have roots in the observable world. When we strip away the supernatural layers, the story of the Nue begins to resemble a classic case of historical misidentification. Imagine the scene through the eyes of a Heian courtier, a person utterly disconnected from the raw realities of the wilderness. A strange, piercing cry shatters the night silence over the palace. The immediate assumption would not be a rare animal but a demon. What known creature could possibly make such an unearthly sound? One strong candidate is the Japanese sero, a goat antelope whose sharp, whistling screams during mating season are genuinely unsettling. To an untrained ear, this noise could easily be interpreted as something monstrous, especially when amplified by fear and the echoing acoustics of a vast palace complex. But the legend speaks of more than just a sound. It describes a physical form seen in a swirling black cloud. This is where the power of suggestion and poor visibility complete the picture. A large, sickly tiger, its ribs showing through its striped pelt, prowling the outskirts of the capital could be misconstrued as the tiger-legged beast. Its unusual, emaciated appearance might explain the tanuki-like torso. A monkey scavenging nearby could be merged with the image of the big cat in a panicked report, and a snake, disturbed from its nest, could be incorporated as the lashing tail in the frantic storytelling that followed. The famous black cloud itself offers another rational avenue. Unusual atmospheric events, like a dense, low-lying fog bank illuminated by a storm's flickering lightning, can create profoundly disorienting and eerie visual effects. A large bird of prey, perhaps a stellar sea eagle, caught in this turbulent weather and silhouetted against the gloom, might present a distorted, monstrous shape to witnesses already primed for a supernatural encounter. They were not lying, they were interpreting a confusing event through the only lens they had, a worldview saturated with yokai and omens. The final piece of this puzzle is mass hysteria. Once the emperor fell ill and the first rumors of a demonic beast began to circulate, a collective psychological phenomenon could have taken hold. Fear is contagious. In such a high-stress environment, where the ruler's health was synonymous with the nation's stability, every rustle of leaves and every strange shadow would be filtered through a lens of absolute terror. A guard's vague report of a large shape on the roof would, by the time it reached the inner court, be solidified into an eyewitness account of a chimera. The human brain, when terrified, excels at piecing together disparate clues to form a complete and often terrifying narrative. The real monster may not have been a fusion of four animals, but a fusion of a natural event, a fearful imagination, and the immense pressure of a court in crisis. This rational dissection does not diminish the legend, it enriches it. It shows us how our ancestors grappled with the unexplained, transforming the frightening gaps in their understanding into stories that have chilled and fascinated us for 1,000 years. The slaying of the new cemented Minamoto Nue Yorimasa's legend, but it was far from the final chapter of his remarkable life. He lived on for decades, a respected elder of the Minamoto clan whose name was synonymous with both martial prowess and refined artistry. This dual nature defined him completely. He was the archetype of the warrior poet, a man who could compose a delicate, melancholic verse about the falling cherry blossoms one moment and lead troops into a brutal skirmish the next. In an age where the samurai class was still solidifying its identity, Yorimasa became a living model of the ideal, proving that true nobility lay in the balance of the pen and the sword. His life demonstrated that brute strength alone was not enough. A great warrior also needed a cultured mind, a depth of spirit that could appreciate beauty even while steeped in the realities of war. This was the essence of Bushido that would be celebrated for centuries, and Yorimasa was one of its earliest and most perfect embodiments. His final act would become as legendary as his confrontation with the monster. In his late 70s, finding himself on the losing side of a pivotal battle and gravely wounded, he chose a samurai's end. He performed seppuku, the ritual suicide, to die with honor rather than surrender. But before doing so, he composed one last poem, a death verse that has echoed through Japanese literature. It reads, "Like a fossil tree from which we gather no flowers, sad has been my life, fated no fruit to produce." These lines are not a cry of despair, but a profound and graceful acceptance of his fate. He compares his life to an ancient, barren tree, acknowledging his military defeats with a poetic elegance that transforms personal tragedy into timeless art. In that single poem, he perfectly fused the two halves of his soul, the warrior who faced death without flinching, and the poet who could find the words to make that death meaningful. This is why Yorimasa endures as more than just a monster slayer. He is a cultural touchstone, a symbol of a very specific kind of Japanese heroism, one where ultimate strength is revealed not in victory, but in the grace and artistry with which one meets their destiny. The Nue's legacy is a tapestry woven from strands of genuine terror and enduring symbolism. This chimera, with its monkey's head, tanuki's body, tiger's legs, and serpent tail, was more than a mere monster. It was a perfect storm of fears given physical form. Its assault on Emperor Konoe represented the ultimate violation, the wild and unknown crashing through the gates of civilization to strike at its divine heart. The creature's cry was a weapon of psychological warfare, and its very existence challenged the power of both medicine and prayer. Yet, in the end, it was defeated by a uniquely human combination of virtues: the unwavering courage of the samurai Minamoto Nue Yorimasa and the loyal finality of his retainer's blade. This story, immortalized in the tale of the Heike, cemented the Nue not just as a beast, but as a profound national omen, a herald of the chaos that would consume an era. Its journey did not end with its death, as the careful disposal of its body and the mound that still bears its name show a culture grappling with how to contain a terror so potent it had to be buried twice. What makes the Nue truly unforgettable is its role as a timeless symbol of the incomprehensible. It is the fear of the problem with no clear solution, the crisis that attacks from multiple angles at once, and the haunting suspicion that our ordered world is far more fragile than it appears. This creature continues to evolve from a classical omen to a modern pop culture icon because the unknown it represents is a constant in the human experience. What legendary creature from folklore captures your imagination? Share your favorite yokai or mythical beast from any culture in the comments below, and let us know what stories of the unseen world you find most compelling.